Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? How's the sound? What's up, fellas? What's in the box? It's Dune Club. Great sound. All right, everyone's saying it's great. Fantastic. All right, we're going to be starting on time today. Right? Meow. Hi. How's it going? Welcome to Dune Club II, Session 4. For this session, we are reading pages 167 through 221. So that's the deal. By the way, guys, Dune Club shirts are almost sold out. So if you want to get one, now's the fucking time, my friend. So how's everybody doing today? Hello. Hi, Internet. Really excited to get into this with you. The most excited to talk about our first chapter. I think that was like my favorite chapter. I don't know about you guys. Really big fan of the first chapter. And also, update, last time I had chapped lips and I had to use olive oil. This time I have a convenient Aquaphor. So it's like not as dire as it was last Sunday. But normally we kind of dick around a little for like 15-20 minutes before we get into it. But today we're just going to have to get into it a little bit sooner, and I hope that people show up on time, whatever. It's not my problem. I said 3:30 a billion times. But the reason why we're getting started earlier today than normal is because we're going to have to take a little bit of a field trip. I don't know if we're going to get to all the questions. I'll try my best. But there is, at the Huntington Botanical Gardens and Library, there is this very special flower. It's a carnivorous flower from the jungle, Sumatra, I believe. And it's called the corpse flower, okay? The corpse flower. It smells like a corpse when it blooms, and it's been on bloom watch. This thing does not bloom very often, like maybe every 4 to 6 years does this bloom. And so it's been getting ready to do it, and there's after hours for members today. And so it's like after this, we're going to shut it down a little early so I can get over to the Huntington and then see this corpse flower. I don't know. It may bloom today. It may bloom tomorrow. I don't know. But if it does, we're going to film it live. But if it does, I'll be there. And I'm going to try to live stream it, though. I'm going to we're going to take, once we're done with Dune Club, we're going to take a break, drive out to the Huntington, and then I'll try to live stream the corpse flower for you guys. It may or may not be bloomed yet.
She has been talking about this flower all week.
I've been talking about this flower all week. I've been getting emails all week. The Huntington is so pumped. We're all so excited for this corpse flower.
Explain to people why this flower is special. What does it do?
Well, as I was saying, it doesn't bloom very often. It's something that, people don't see because it's in a jungle.
And
it smells bad.
Yeah.
It smells really bad when it blooms. And it only blooms for like a day or two. Like when it blooms, it's only like you can only see it for a day or two before it like.
And it stinks like a corpse.
And it stinks. It smells bad. To attract flies and other insects to it that'll help pollinate it, but also to eat those bugs as well. So yeah, I'm super excited. So I'm gonna try to live stream it on Twitch. I downloaded earlier the OBS software for my phone, so I'm just gonna have my phone and just try to live stream it from there. So we're gonna be doing that. So we're gonna have a little bit of a field trip. And I also think, with Dune, it's like they don't really have a lot of plant life. Although and now Arrakis has some plants now that Paul's like in charge. But, it's really special to see something this cool. And I remember in second grade when I learned about this plant when we were, studying jungles. And it just like really caught my imagination. I was just like, wow, like what a crazy plant. Like that's fascinating. Like I just thought it was so cool. And so now I have the chance as an adult to actually see one, which is like, I never even thought I'd ever be able to get to see one like up close and in person. So what a special treat. So yeah. So we're going to get started like right meow. All right, guys, welcome to Dune Club 2, Session 4. Let's start with an overview. In Session 4, things are heating up. Chani is now with child. She is totally preggers, and Paul bargains with the Reverend Mother Gaius Hel Mohim, his seed, in exchange for the life of his beloved. Meanwhile, Scytale risks a meeting with Edric and asks the fishman to agitate the Gola, that the situation is quickly becoming explosive and their conspiracy must pick up the pace. Elsewhere, Cheney walks in on Paul and Hate's training session with murder in her heart after finding out that Irulan has been slipping her contraceptives that are now causing complications in her pregnancy. Paul works to dissuade Cheney from killing the princess and to show her the Duncan, Idaho inside the Gola. Later, Scytale comes to Muah Deeb in the form of Lichna, Othaim's daughter, the Fremen woman killed in previous chapters. The Emperor easily sees through the disguise and plays along, listening to the face dancer's message of a plot among the Fremen to destroy him, and that he must come with Cheney to pick up a human distrans messenger with all of the details of said plot from her father's house. Paul agrees to go, but that he will go alone, and secretly orders his head of security to keep the face dancer under special guard. Now engaged, Paul takes his first steps into the trap that has been laid for him. In disguise, he meets with his guide during an evening rite at Alia's fane and watches his sister perform her religious incantation from within the crowd of supplicants before departing to Othaim's house. So let's start with our first chapter, Bargaining with the Bene Gesserit, Paul's interior decorating, and Gom Jabbar 2, Electric Boogaloo. So I love how this chapter sets up with the header, "You do not beg the sun for mercy." You know, it really kind of sets it up where it's like Paul is so desperate to save the life of his beloved that he is willing to strike a bargain with the Bene Gesserit, even though he knows that it's kind of futile, but it's like he's going to try anything he can. And our homegirl, Gaius Halmohim, has been summoned by Paul, and she's schlepping her old bones through these immense corridors that just go on and on. And she describes it as the place reeked of terrifying physical power. No planet, no civilization in all of human history had ever before seen such man-made immensity. On her walk up, she's thinking to herself, why the fuck are they dragging me like all this way through all these crazy ass passages? Like, what is the point of all this? Because Muah Deeb does everything he does is with a point. And the Reverend Mother is just like always questioning what she sees. And I think that this chapter I really love this chapter a lot because you finally get to see through a Reverend Mother's eyes. You get to see how she interprets everything around her, what is in her mindset. And that's a really fascinating place to be. And so she's always interpreting what she sees. She's always asking why. You know, why is this happening? For what purpose? You know, and what design? And she comes up with a clue. It is to oppress her in preparation for this audience, essentially to make her feel small. And she's like, okay, well, why would Paul want to make me feel small? And then she's like, oh, wait, because he's getting ready to ask me for something. Like he wants to diminish me so that he can potentially make me more pliable when he asks for something, when he makes a demand. And this is a total power move on Paul's part. Like this whole chapter is just like power move after power move after power move. And it's really interesting because you haven't seen Paul and the Reverend Mother in the same room together, kind of having a one-on-one battle between the two of them since the days on Caladan when he was tested with the box. I mean, he saw her again when he won on the plains of Arrakeen at the end of Dune, but she was in an entourage. You know, it's like this is when they're finally like coming head to head again after all of these years. And so now we're getting to Paul's trippy ass throne room. Okay, so these passages are getting like bigger, crazier. She's never seen a building this large before. She's like, this is fucking crazy. And these chambers get like gradually larger and larger and larger as you come towards Paul's grand reception room. And on your way there's a big fucking door. Okay. And this door is 80 meters high. So for us Americans with our crazy fucking system of whatever the fuck, that's 262 feet. So I looked it up, and the Statue of Liberty on its pedestal is like only 40 feet taller than these doors. So these doors are about as tall as the Statue of fucking Liberty on the pedestal, not from like toe to tip, from pedestal to tip. So that's those are pretty big fucking doors. That's like, what? Like, that's insane. So she goes inside the giant doors. She enters the grand reception hall of Muah Deeb, and then she thinks to herself, like, the saying that's going around in the Imperium, Muah Deeb, before whom all people are dwarfed, you know, and this whole lead up is absolutely like playing into that. And I love that this room that she walks into, we finally get in there, and it's a work of engineering genius in its scope and immensity. And the best thing about his grand reception room is that it is designed to fool the eye of the supplicant into making him look huge, looking forced perspective. So, like, everything in this room is designed to make you feel small and Paul feel big, okay? And, like, that's not an accident. Like, they designed all of this stuff. And so, like, what happens is that this room subtly grows smaller at the end, but you don't notice that because it's doing it in such a way that it just looks like it's receding into the background. It's forcing the perspective. And then, so the untrained eye wouldn't pick up on the fact that the room is actually getting smaller. You would naturally assume that the room is the same size at the end. But, like, he's got his dais put in such a way where you would think that he would be smaller from that perspective. You're like walking up like, oh, he should be smaller, but he looks way bigger. But it's just because the room is using forced perspective and tricking your eye. And it's just like, like, that's so cool. It made me think about, I was reading this thing a long time ago about the show Friends. And there's a set, Central Perk. And it's supposed to be this big bustling coffee shop. And, like, there's forced perspective going on in there to where it's like it gets smaller and, like, all the chairs are, like, smaller in the background to make you think it's bigger, and they'd have to get, like, smaller actors to go back there, but really the room is super small when it looks big. So it's like they're totally doing the same thing, which I think is pretty cool. Now, another thing that I really enjoyed is so Helen describes the halls that led her up as being bland. And so in my mind, you know, it's like bland and color-wise. Like, the color palette is really bland. And so in my imagination, I was, like, thinking of, like, yellow earthy stones, like brownish gray, like muted shit. Okay, she's like walking these giant muted halls. And then, so when you walk up on Paul's throne, you finally are confronted with color for the first time, you know, and your eye is going to automatically, after being surrounded in such bland, colorless surroundings, your eye is immediately going to be focused on whatever, like, fun fucking color is there. That's just what happens to human beings. That's how our eyes work. And like, I love how it's color played upon the unprotected psyche, you know. So for people the uninitiated who don't understand this, it's like this color is really going to, like, fuck with you in a way. And, like, he's influencing you in all ways, not only with the architecture of his shit, but also with the color. Like, he's even influencing you by using color. Like, that's, like, this guy doesn't leave anything to chance. And his throne is cut out of one giant single emerald. You know, one huge, massive emerald crystal has been cut into his throne. And it's green, which is like the Atreides color. So it's like he's repping his home house color. But then it's also green makes you think of growing things, like things that grow. Plants are green. The vegetable kingdom is very green. And then green is also the Fremen color for death and for mourning. And so you have all of this symbolism just from, like, what color he has chosen for his throne. And it's like, I love that she says it's life and death in one symbol, a clever stress of opposites, you know. So it's like, even like he's going to make you feel tense just like walking up on his throne just from the color choices alone. And then behind this throne are draperies in burnt orange, curried gold, cinnamon flecks, which, like, would really set it off. Like, I mean, I love greens with, like, those colors, like oranges and yellows behind it. It's kind of a 70s palette a little bit. But I love those colors, and I love the color description. And it's just like, in my mind, it just really, like, popped off. Because one thing that is interesting about Frank Herbert's writing is that he really doesn't talk about color details very often. Like, he talks about the blue within blue of Fremen eyes and things like that. But he generally keeps his descriptions of things like very, very like to a minimum. And so for me, as a very colorful person who really enjoys color, I'm very sensitive to color, even like reading about color. To have him finally like really talk about these colors, it's like, wow. But again, Frank Herbert's talking about color for a purpose, you know. It's like he's not going to talk about color just to describe it for you, to make you whatever. Like he wants you to kind of use your own imagination. But in this instance, he's using his descriptions of color to influence you as a reader. And I love how she also thinks, you know, to a trained eye, the symbolism of all of this is obvious, but it contained hammer blows to beat down the uninitiated. So even if you don't understand the symbolism of everything that's going on, you'll still like unconsciously pick up on it, and it will work on you in unconscious ways. And also, not only that, it takes forever to get up there. So you walk in these giant doors, you see him, he looks huge, and then you gotta walk all the way over there, and it takes for fucking ever. And you feel like an asshole the whole way up. And it's like any tendency towards resentment would be squeezed out of you by unbridled power which focused down upon your person. You might start the long march toward that throne as a human dignity, but you ended the march as a gnat. You know, it's just like, dang, like just like power move after power move after power move. You know, it's just like Paul is just like fucking crazy. Anyways, she notices that Chani and she finally gets up there. She notices Chani and Irulan is not there, and she's like, all right, you know, what's going on with this? And and so I love that when she gets up there, like she's been thinking all of this shit the whole time. We see in her mind, she sees how she's being manipulated by all of these illusions of power, you know, because it's like color and immensity and engineering, like that's just, you know, it's just to show. I mean, yeah, he's powerful, but it's also more of a show than anything. And this bitch like immediately decides to go on the offensive. Like she immediately is like, I am not gonna be like cowed by all of this. Like even though I feel like a gnat when I ended this march, like I'm gonna still go on the offensive. And she's like, oh, so the great Paul Atreides deigns to see the one that he banished. And it was just like, man, she's like, you cannot, this bitch is so crazy. Like, she's so much fun. Like, she's like still poking at him. She's not going to be cowed by all of this. And it's like, she knows that he wants something. And she's just like, she's so formidable. Like, she's formidable as fuck. Like, even though she understands that Paul has powers way greater than hers. Like, she's still not going to drop her guard. And she's still going to be teaching him lessons, like, regardless. And then so Paul is like, okay. Like, he's like, all right, this bitch is like, she's still going to be giving me trouble here. She's like, oh, well, you know, he tells her, Stilgar wants me to send you away. And she's like, really? I thought he'd want me dead, you know. And then I love how Stilgar pipes up and he's like, often I must speak otherwise than I think. That is called diplomacy, which I was like, ooh, Stilgar, good one. Like, I love that. That's so true. Like, that's what diplomacy is. I mean, that's fucking, yes. But then she comes back, you know, like whip smart with her smart ass. She's like, well, then let us dispense with diplomacy as well. You know, like, I'm done. What do you want from me? Let's stop playing these fucking games. I know you want some shit from me. Let's get to this. And Paul is like, all right, I can see you're tired. And I like that. Again, it's like another power move where it's like, okay, so she's gone on the offensive. But then Paul still notices that she's an older woman. She's tired from this fucking long ass walk. And he's like, I can see you're tired. So again, it's like emphasizing that like, you're weak, you know, but in a nice subtle way. Let's go sit down. Let's go sit down somewhere, not in this crazy ass ridiculous room. And it's like, it's interesting because he's playing like good cop and bad cop with the Reverend Mother, but like he's both cops, you know, like he's the good cop and he's the bad cop, which is just like, so that's so Muah Deeb. But then they go to the chill room. And I do like that also the Reverend Mother picks up on like, yeah, he did this because he wants to show everyone that like, oh, fuck her. You know, I made this Reverend Mother look small. But really, it's like he does think of her as not a peer, but as close to a peer as there is in the universe. I mean, like, she can give him a... How many people are going to give Paul a run for his money and challenge him at all? Like, present any sort of a challenge, you know? Like, she's definitely someone who can go toe-to-toe with him and challenge him to some degree. And so they go to the chill room. And Paul's got his team there. He's got Alia, he's got Hate, he's got Stilgar. Okay, so he's, like, got all this backup. And he tells her, I wish to bargain with you for the life of my beloved. So he's like, he knows that the Bene Gesserit have designs. You know, he assumes that they're trying to kill Chani. They don't want her alive. And the other conspirators, whoever else is in this with her. And the Reverend Mother is like, well, have you seen a vision of my hand in her death? And he's like, he avoids the question. You know, he avoids the question. And then so it's like, she knows he hasn't seen shit by avoiding the question. He's like, oh, well, I know what it is you want from me. So he's still like trying to play a power move where he's just like avoiding a question and then being like, oh no, I know what I know what you want from me, and like to distract her. But she realizes that he hasn't seen shit, so the conspiracy is still hidden. So she's like, yes. But then even though in her mind, she's like, yes, he doesn't know for sure, she's still sitting there with like eyes, like slit eyes and like pursed lips. You know, she's still just like in her mind, she's like, woo. But like on her face, she's like this at him, like doing the bitch face at him. You've seen it. If you have a girlfriend or wife, when she knows you're full of shit and she's like narrows her eyes at you, that's what she's doing. And so she's like, okay, well, you want the life of your beloved. What coin do you have to offer me? You know, and she doesn't even act like, oh, what do you mean? Or like, oh, how could we help save Chani? She doesn't even try to do that shit. She's like, what do you have to offer? And he's like, I offer you my seed, but not my person. You know, Irulan has to be banished, artificially inseminated, and Chani is preggers. Like, I already, like, Chani's pregnant. And fuck Irulan, get her out of here. But you can artificially inseminate her. And the Reverend Mother is like so pissed. She's like so pissed when she hears that Chani's pregnant, because her Bene Gesserit shit, like, you just can't stop, won't stop with that. Like, they're always looking at the possibility of genes, and for their apex fucking human to breed with some wild Fremen with no ancestry that they can look into, you know, they have no idea what's going to happen, like with this crossing. She thinks that's completely like just bananas, you know. It's just like really bums her out. And she's so pissed that she closes her eyes to hide his face. Like, she's so mad at hearing that Chani is pregnant, and she's just like has to close her eyes because she doesn't want to even look at his face, you know. She's just like, ugh, I gotta like hide him for a second, like, because I'm just like, I'm losing it, you know. And you know, reason is the first victim of strong emotion, you know. So she's trying to like get it back together. And so I love that she thinks to herself, for the sisterhood, mating mingled more than sperm and ovum, one aimed to capture the psyche. You know, it's just like, it's not like when a Bene Gesserit comes for you to take your seed and seduce you, it's not just about taking your seed. It's about like getting you to fall in love with them, you know, like forever, to like be on their side, to have such an experience that you will be team this chick for the rest of your life. They want to capture your psyche. There's actually, and this isn't talked about until the later things, but it's called imprinting. The Bene Gesserit do something called imprinting. And there are specific girls who are good at it called imprinters. And what they do is they give a man such an intense sexual romp that for the rest of their lives, they will be like pliable towards the Bene Gesserit. They will be like happy towards them and be like, I will help you guys. Yes. Like, you gave me such an amazing experience that I will never forget, that I've never felt anything that intense in my entire life. So I will forever be friendly to the Bene Gesserit. So that's kind of the deal. But popular opinion in the universe since the Butlerian Jihad is a no on artificial insemination. Like, none of that. We do not, like, that is not the deal. We're not down with that science shit. Like, get it out. And it will bring down popular wrath upon them if it was ever exposed. So if Irulan gets artificially inseminated, they could never be like, oh, this is Paul's son, and try to get a throne with him, because everyone would be like, oh, wait, this is like an artificially inseminated baby and you guys were a part of that? Like, fuck you. You know, it would be like they would be knocked off of Twitter real quick. You know, they would be just their careers would be destroyed. They wouldn't be able to be on Twitter. They'd have to leave the internet if everyone found out. And so this coin might save the Atreides genes for the sisterhood, but it would never buy a throne. And I love that she turns to the Gola. Hate is there, and she's like, Mentat, you know, function as a Mentat for us. Should such an offer be made, and having been made, should it be accepted? And the Mr. Philosopher Computer Undead guy, which, by the way, this guy is a philosopher, human, computer, undead guy. So you asking this guy, created by the Bene Lilacs, by the way, he's a creature created by the Bene Lilacs, who is the direct competitor of the Bene Gesserit. Advise me on this business offer, because this is what's going down. Like, this is a business offer. This is a business transaction at the very highest level. And he lays it out, and he's like, the offer is life for a life, which is no small matter. You know, like, that's what he comes back with his philosophical. It's cool to see, like, philosophical business bartering. Is really fantastic. But Alia comes through, and she's like, well, what else is hidden in this bargain? You know, because you have these two. You don't have just one Reverend Mother in the room. You have another Reverend Mother in the room, and she's a wild Reverend Mother who has no, like, she was not trained by the Bene Gesserit. She does not have, like, all those controls and stuff. Like, she does not have any fucking allegiance to them. And so Hate brings up, and it's funny too. It's interesting. Gaius Hel Mohim, when she's doing all this, all of the Reverend Mothers in her awareness, in her consciousness, are aware. Like, all of her, like, all the little consciousnesses inside of her, they're all listening right now. Like, they're all woken up, and like Alia is also in a similar state. And Hate brings up the Bene Lilacs, which is necessary. He should, as a Mentat, bring them up. But it's also, like, kind of suspicious, you know, because nobody knows what fucking team he's on. You know, it's like, yeah, he might think he's on the Atreides team, but how has he been tampered with, you know? And he says, well, one wonders why the witches of the Bene Gesserit have not used the Leilaxu methods. And during all of this, Paul feels totally alienated. Like, he sets everything in motion, but then lets everyone else just start taking over, lets his team take over. And he just feels adrift. And even Alia, even his sister, is a stranger to him. And Alia comes back, and she's like, if we set the Atreides genes adrift in a Bene Gesserit river, who knows what may result? Who knows? You know, like, this is crazy. And I love that's like two Reverend Mothers come together communicating in a single thought. Like, finally these two women look at each other, and they may be on opposite ends, you know, of the spectrum here. They maybe have, like, different ends here, but they're still of the same type. And when she brings up this idea of what would happen if the Atreides genes become adrift in a Bene Gesserit river, that indirectly brings up the question, what would happen if the Bene Lilacs got the Atreides genes? I mean, what would happen then? Because they don't have, like, at least the Bene Gesserit have some sort of ethics and morals about things. You know, the Bene Lilacs give zero fucks. They're the fucking Dr. Frankensteins of this universe. Like, they have no ethics and morals when it comes to this sort of stuff. And also it brings up, like, how is the Gola tampering in all of this? Like, nobody knows what his deal is. Is Paul going to make an offer to the Bene Lilacs? You know, because now he's over here talking to the Bene Gesserit. Is he going to also, like, talk to them and make a bargain with them? And there was a really great self-assessment by the Reverend Mother Gaius Hel Mohim. And she's like, thinks to herself, the pitfall of the Bene Gesserit training lay in the powers granted. Such powers predisposed one to vanity and pride, but power deluded those who used it. One tended to believe power could overcome any barrier, including one's own ignorance. And it's like, she's like, she can't and that's like, she can't even think. She comes to herself. She's like, okay, I can't even think about the Bene Lilacs right now. Like, I can't even deal with them because the main thing are these apex genes. Like, I can't even worry about them. We don't want to start over. But then she's like the devil on her shoulder pops and he's like, well, maybe we could control a mutation. Like, maybe we don't have to start over. But she's like, Pa, no, gross. Like, don't think about it. Like, don't think like that. Don't think like that. Like, we cannot, it's a slippery slope. You cannot start using their fucking unethical, weird methods like that. If you do that, then it's going to open the floodgates for a lot of other shit. And she thinks about like Paul, like pushing Paul with her own offer. And that's the thing about not debates. What's the right word for this? When you're like, you have two different sides and they're trying to not barter, but they're trying to like come up with a trade with each other. The thing is like, he's like, this is my only offer, but it's like, it's not, it's like he's highballing her and then she's going to come back with another offer. And you have to. You have to know that when anyone offers you anything, it's generally a highball and you're expected to come back with something else. Like, don't just take the first offer. Like, you have to kind of like push and prod. And that's something that really isn't like taught, like business deals and stuff like that. That's not something that's really taught to most of us because we're like taught to be wage slaves and not to like learn how to bargain for ourselves. And so I really like watching this bargaining because I've had to learn about bargaining being in the business world. So she's thinking to herself, well, maybe, like, how much does he love Chaney? Would he be willing to, like, cross with his sister? Would he be willing to have sex with his sister? And, like, we would take that. Like, fuck Irulan. Maybe we could do that instead. And like, Paul, like, just, he knows what she's thinking. Like, he sees it. And he gets embarrassed about it. He like his face darkens a little bit, even though not everybody else in the room is understanding what she's thinking. Like he knows, and he's like, "You better be careful. Like don't say anything crazy right now. Like don't even say anything crazy right now." And so to stall for time, she brings up Irulan because she's like, "Okay, he's not ready. I can't soften him with that one yet. So it's like I gotta wait." So she brings up Irulan to kind of like to keep the negotiation. There it is, negotiation. That's what it is, negotiation. To keep this negotiation going. And so Paul's like, shut up. Like, Irulan will do whatever. Irulan will do whatever. Like, you don't care about Irulan. She'll do whatever you tell her to do. And Irulan sucks. And then the Reverend Mother's like, yeah, she does suck because, like, we trained her to kind of suck. And, like, she is just meant to be used. And, like, he's got me there. So, he gets her again, It's like there's no out-arguing Paul here. And I love that, like, another power move to notice is there's a couple times where the Reverend Mother says, the throne. Will you put this child on the throne? And she's specifically saying the throne because she's trying to depower him. She's like, this isn't your throne. This is the throne. This is up for grabs. Like, this is the throne for the universe. But every time she says that, he corrects her and is like, my throne. My throne. Like, say, like, they never, like, they're always, like, pushing each other. Like, it's just it's such a great fucking, I love seeing these two go head to head. But he's like, my throne, yes, I'm going to put Chaney's child on my throne. This is my throne. And yes, I'm going to put his ass on there. And she's like, okay, well, I need to talk to my sisters. Like, I can't make this decision by myself. That's not something I can do. Will you permit me to send a message? And Paul thinks, like, as though she needs my permission. Because, again, he wants to bargain with them. So he's obviously going to let her send a message because he's asking for something from her. So, I mean, he's at a disadvantage here. And it's funny because she's finally, like, not fighting him for power, and she's throwing in decorum niceties like, well, will you permit me? But then he's like, fuck you, like, he, like, almost expects her to, like, push him, and then, like, when she doesn't, he's just like, whatever, bitch, like, don't act like you don't know, like, of course you can, like, you're gonna send a fucking message, but you can send a message, but don't take too long. All right, don't take too long because I know you guys are gonna stall. I know you guys are gonna stall for time. I know you guys are gonna do that, and and then the Gola brings up, though, again, the Gola that was a gift, created from the Leilaxu, and the guild says, "Will you bargain with the Bene Lilacs?" And so he brings it up again. Like, he brings it up again, which again looks super suspicious. And when he brings it up again, Alia, who's been sitting with her eyes closed, like, pop open. She just, like, pops open, like she's been awakened by a dangerous intruder. Everyone in the room is just, like, suspicious of this bitch. And he's like, I've not decided that. I've not decided that I'm going to bargain with the Leilaksu. What I have decided is that I'm going to go into the desert as soon as possible, and our child will be born in Sietch. Okay, we're going to go back to the desert, back to our Sietch, and that's where we will have our child. And, Stilgar's like, wise choice, my lord. Like, yes, because that definitely, like, that's some Fremen shit. Like, that's a great idea in his mind. But Alia is like, that's a bad idea, because she also has abilities to see into the future, and she sees that the future pathway where this child is born in Sietch is filled with fucking sadness, and she's like, why is he doing this? Why is he fixing himself upon this path? Like, what? And then it's brought up, well, have the Bene Lilacs talk to you, Paul? Have they come to you? And he's like, no, they haven't come to me. And so the Reverend Mother and Stilgar leave to send a message, and then Alia keeps going and asking Hate, will the Leilaksu bid for favor? And he shrugs. He's like, It's like, oh, what a suspicious bitch. Like, he's just like, nobody can trust this slippery Zen Sunni mentat dead guy motherfucker, It's like, and it's like, and like Paul says, like, who knows what these eyes are recording? I mean, the Leilaksu may be able to see this entire fucking conversation through his eyeballs right now. Like, he doesn't know. Nobody knows, like, and why is he bringing it up? Did he put this, it's crazy. Anyways, so while Alia banters with Hate about this whole situation, Paul totally disassociates. He gets really emo, and little tears start kind of coming from his eyes. And he's so bummed about all of this, because he's just like, knows that this is kind of futile, but he's doing it anyways. He's got to try. And he turns towards his sister so she could see his tears. And he knows that, like, she's so ingrained with that Fremen shit that she will have the immediate Fremen reaction of awe. Because whenever a Fremen sees someone giving moisture to the dead, it's like this, it's fucking awe-inspiring to them. Like, it's this beautiful, really intense thing. And he thinks to himself, like, let her wonder at them, because wondering was a kindness now. Like, because all that's going forward is, like, awfulness. It's like everything's gonna suck. So at least, like, I'll give her a moment to feel something that isn't negative, that isn't, like, that will give her a sense of wonder, which is, like, so nice of him. Because he's fixed himself upon such a path of destruction. And inside of him, sorrow and compassion warred. And I like that he thinks to himself, like, there are many degrees of sight and many degrees of blindness. What senses do we lack that we cannot see another world all around us? And that brings it back to the Orange Catholic Bible. That was Juana's favorite passage, if you remember. The good doctor, Yui, his wife, when he gives Paul the Bible, and then he immediately opens to that chapter when he gives it to her and reads that verse aloud. We come in, and I love that verse. I mean, I think about it all the time. Like, what senses do we lack that we cannot hear and see another world around us? Like, because there are things that, like, I'm always looking. I am always interpreting things. I like to look on things on a symbolic level. I'm really interested in symbols and how they work upon our unconscious and our conscious mind. And I'm always, like, kind of, like, looking for weird connections, because it's like synchronicities and things let you know that you're kind of, like, on the right path with the universe. So I'm always, like, looking for those things. And like one weird thing that I found, that this is, like, super stupid and off topic, but when I tried to do the Haunted Mystic Monday, like, it went terrible. Our first Mystic Monday didn't work at all. And, like, Beans, like, jumped out of my arms at one point and freaked out, and, like, she, like, cut, like, her back paw, like, she cut me, man, like, real hard. And, like, I have a scar. Like, some of the ink is missing. Like, she got me so hard that it took the ink out of this tattoo. And it's, like, on this hand right here. And, like, I was telling my friend Jessica, who's, like, my birthday twin, we have, like, weird synchronicities always happening. Like, me and this girl are always, like, synced up in weird ways. And, like, because we were both born same day, same year. We have a lot of similarities, even though we're also very different. And, like, the same fucking day, around the same time, a cut on her hand just opened up randomly. you know? And it was just like, wait, what? And I was just like thinking to myself, what other people do I know that I'm connected to in weird ways have had like cuts open up? And like, where is this coming from? How is this connected? What does this mean? Probably means nothing. I don't know, but it's really fucking interesting. And it's really weird that like this person has a cut on their hand in the same place that I have a cut on my hand. On my hand. What does that mean? It's like, it's so crazy. And it's like, what senses do we lack? Like, there might be people that you're connected to that you're doing the same thing at the same time and you have no fucking clue. You have no fucking clue, but we're all connected in these weird ways and we'll never know. It's fascinating. Anyways, back on to what we're supposed to be talking about. So Alia touches the tear. You know, she has to. She's just like, that's what they, like, Fremens just can't help themselves. They're like, a tear. And she touches the tear. And she tells her brother, we must not grieve for those dear to us before their passing, because she knows that Chani is a dead woman walking. She knows that this is not going to be good for Chani. And he says to her, before their passing, like, what is before? You know, like, what? Like, I'm living in the fucking future, bitch. Like, you know, it's just like, I what do you mean before? Like, to me, she's already dead. You know, to me, because I live so, I'm infused with the spectacle of time. I'm living in this kind of fucking future timeline. I thought that was really sad. He gets super emo. It's like, Paul's so emo in this. But with rightly so, I'd be fucking sad too. So, moving on. Edric and Scytale. So, Scytale hears that Paul has made an offer to the Bene Gesserit and he freaks out. He's like, fuck. Like, Paul is already starting to split up our conspiracy. Okay, things are going way faster than he anticipated. And he also realizes that his conspiratorial group is not compatible. They don't all get along. I mean, everybody hates Edric. You know, that's not good. The Bene Lilacs and the Bene Gesserit are direct competitors. And then Irulan is like, who knows, you know, what her deal is. She's kind of useless. And that their gambit could unravel at any moment and their chance be lost for who knows how long. So, I mean, it's like they've got a chance now. They've got a shot now. And if this doesn't work out and Paul, like, breaks them up, then, like, their chance could be gone for a really long time. And so he takes a major security risk and he meets with Edric to ask him to prod the Ghola, agitating him with questions about his former being, which will stir the Ghola into actions that will serve their purposes. What exactly that is, we don't know. It's kind of mysterious. But I did love that Edric has a moment of clear thought where he's like asking Scytale, like, you're risking a lot to come here. And he's like, no one would look twice at the shapes I've been today. Okay, I look totally different. I've been looking different all day. Like, no one's gonna know. And he thinks this chameleon thinks a change of shape will hide him from anything. You know, and it's like Edric is like sensing weakness in this face dancer. He's like, yeah, this face dancer may be fucking badass, whatever, but like he's weak in the fact that he thinks a change of shape will hide him from anything. Like that's a flaw in his thinking. But then, you know, Edric, like Scytale hates Edric and like he senses his weaknesses. And like I love also that Edric wears a leotard. By the way, I love that he's wearing a leotard with like a little belt with pouches on it, like a fish man with like a little leotard on is really funny in my brain. And I love that Scytale hates this weird bitch like so much. She's just like, everyone is just so repulsed by Edric, you know. Everyone is just like, oh god, you're fucking gross, you know. It's like you're such a fucking mutated human. Like nobody even wants to look at him, you know. It's just like everyone's so disgusted with him. It's like poor Edric. And sensing that Paul has planted a seed of fear of Alia in Edric's mind, because remember back when Edric and Paul were talking and they were debating, and like Paul's like, hey, you know, I'm not a god, but my sister, she's a goddess and she's crazy and she'd fucking kill you, dude. Like she's fucking crazy. Like he planted this seed of fear, and like this seed of fear is absolutely working on Scytale, you know. It's like, or on Edric. It's like Edric totally is weirded out by Alia and is like fearful of her because of this seed that Paul has planted. And Scytale notices this and prods him about Alia, saying philosophy and culture has never, like you've heard what they say about her, philosophy and culture has never had such a patroness. Pleasure and beauty unite. And like as soon as he says all this, like it sends Edric off. Like he triggers Edric super hard. Like he's triggering this dude. And why does this trigger Edric? Why would Scytale bring up philosophy and culture? Why would he bring up pleasure and beauty? And why would that set Edric off? And that's because Edric neither knows pleasure and is considered revolting by other humans. You know, like it's like pleasure and beauty, and it's like Edric, who knows what, he doesn't have a girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all know that Edric doesn't have a girlfriend. We don't even know if these guys mate, like what their deal is with all of that. They are physically revolting to other human beings. Beauty is like, oh my God, like, ugh. And then he's also pure mathematics. I mean, he dabbles in pure mathematics, prescience, he lives in space. So Edric also does not indulge in philosophy. You know, the guild does not indulge in philosophy. They're like, fuck philosophy. They're engineers. Okay, like they're engineers. They are not philosophers over there at the guild. And he also can't be a part of culture because he can't be on a planet with a bunch of people, and he can't hang out. He has to be in a fucking tank, you know, so it's like he can't take part of any of this, you know, which makes him, and all of this like makes him feel like a slave, you know. And like Edric pops off talking about how like, oh, you know, like the fucking Atreides have created a bunch of literate ignorance, you know, and slaves always revolt, you know. And it's like but that's like he's really talking about himself. Like he feels like a slave, you know, like he feels like a slave and he wants to revolt. And it's interesting that like Alia is like the anti-Edric, you know, like the anti-Edric, and like that's why she pisses him off so much. And so Scytale has obviously been spooked. He's starting to spook Edric, and they start talking about the jihad and how all things are finite. When Edric slips up and says Muah Deeb used his jihad, and Scytale's like, excuse me, the jihad used Paul. Like, shut up, you dumb bitch. Like, stop talking. And he says, you can't stop a mental epidemic. It leaps from person to person across parsecs. It's overwhelmingly contagious. It strikes at the unprotected side in the place where we lodge the fragments of other such plagues. Who can stop a thing? Muah Deeb hasn't the antidote. The things has roots in chaos. Can orders reach there? You know, it's like, yes, like that's so true. You know, it's like we do have these mental epidemics, and it's like Muah Deeb is not responsible for this jihad. Like, he's merely a part of it, you know. And really what it is this thing that's like this mental epidemic that's been created in the unconscious of all of humanity, and all of humanity has worked to come to this point because unconsciously they want to mingle the gene pool. And so when he says this, Edric's like, are you infected? So are you infected, bro? And he's like, Scytale's like, we are all affected. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're all affected. Like, you're playing a part in this. I'm playing a part in this. And this whole thing is ready to blow. And we are at the center of an event that will change the course of human history. Like, do you not understand what's happening right now? Like, we are at the center of an event that will change everything. And Edric's like, whatever, dude. It's fine. Like, he's just like, it's fine. Paul goes, you know, we'll sweep up. It'll be totally chill. And he's like, Scytale's like, what about Alia? What about Alia? What if we might get to him, but what about her? You know, what if she gets married? What if she has a child? You know, like, what's that going to do? That's going to change everything. If she gets married and has a child, that's going to change everything. And just do what the fuck I tell you. Go prod the Gola. Shut your weird fish mouth. And he's like, well, if I don't? And then Scytale's like, then we're all doomed, you know, like, if you don't. So I don't know, bro. Like, you figure it out. But I love their deal. It's funny watching those two go at each other. So next chapter, we have Paul, Hate, and Chani. Chani is now 6 weeks pregnant, and she's having a difficult pregnancy. She is currently ill. She's taken ill. She went to the doctors, best doctors in the fucking universe. But Paul is waiting to hear back about his beloved, and he's also waiting to hear back from the sisterhood, who is stalling. Exactly what he thought. They have not sent any message back, and he's like, God, I knew they would stall. I'm like, here they are stalling. And prescient vision, I like that it talks about prescient vision had recorded these moments, but he shielded his awareness from the oracle, preferring the role here of a time fish, swimming not where he willed, but where the currents carried him. Destiny permitted no struggles now. So even though, yeah, he's prescient, he knows the future, he's like shielding his awareness from it. You know, he's like, there's a part of him that knows that the doctors will be fine and Chani will come in any minute, but like he's shielding his awareness from it. Because there's a lot of times where like people know things, but then they don't want to know them, and then they just like send them to the back, you know. So that's what he's doing. And he's been training with the Gola. They've been doing shield practice, which, I mean, he grew up training with Duncan Idaho. Duncan Idaho is one of the reasons why he's such a badass. And finally, the truth comes out. What he had concealed from Chani prolonged her life because he knows that she will die in childbirth and he doesn't want to lose her. So finally, from Paul's perspective, we finally see the truth. Like, if you haven't picked up on it by now, that he knows that the time of birth is the time of death for her. And that's why he was letting the contraceptives go. That's why he didn't, like, he was just like, I don't mind the Irulan's poisoning you with this shit because, like, I want to keep you around longer. And he doesn't want to lose her. But then when he thinks about all the alternate future timelines where she doesn't have a child, that included slave pits, torture, agonizing sorrow, and worse, he decides that childbirth is a way better way for her to go. You know, it's like, because if he doesn't do it this way, she's going to die in other ways that are far more terrible and awful. Slave pits. He doesn't want to see Chani in a slave pit or know that Chani's going to end up in a slave pit. He doesn't want to think about her being tortured. And this is something that she wants. Like, she wants to bear the royal heir, you know? And it's like, who am I to make this decision for her? And so he thinks, when he's thinking about this, she steps in and she's pissed, you know, like, she's pissed. Everything about her stood as like a background to violence. I love that the way he describes it. And she's figured out that Irulan's been feeding her contraceptives that are messing with her pregnancy, because she was taking these contraceptives for so long, whatever they are complicating her pregnancy and making things like not so awesome. And in that Fremen Fae way, they have a little bit of that shine to them. The Fremen have the shine. She says, "My life burns faster. The birth now controls my life. It goes at a terrible pace. And then she's like, and I gotta eat and drink all the spice as a remedy for these complications, you know, like, and I love that she says the birth now controls my life. And it's like, she doesn't even know how true that is, you know, like, she's saying something that's completely true. But she's like, and I gotta eat all the spice to remedy whatever this contraceptive poison I've been fed, because the spice is it's a cure-all, you know, I mean, it's like, it's a geriatric lifelong, like, life extender, makes you not sick from anything, you know, protects you from illness and sickness. And so she's got to eat all this for her baby so that her baby will be strong. And she's like, I'm gonna kill this bitch, like, I'm gonna kill Irulan, I gotta kill her. And Paul's like, no. And she's like, why not? And he's like, cause like, no. And she's like, well, have you seen it? And he's like, no. And then she's like, well, why can't I? And he's like, because I ask it, you know, just chill out, because I ask it. And I love that he thinks about how nothing from the desert has been taken from her. Like, that's why he loves her so much. It's like, she's just been here. She's still the same old Chani. She's still ride or die. Being in this imperial keep and being like the imperial concubine has not like changed her. She's still like the same chick that she used to be. And she accepts this, you know, as a woman of the desert, she accepts this, but she decides to challenge him on another thing. So she's like, okay, I'll stop pressing about the killing Irulan business, but I'm going to press you on something else. Why are you crossing blades with this fucking possible spy Gola bitch? You know, like, this guy is obviously a trap. Why are you, like, training with this guy? He could, like, kill you. He could go nuts. We don't know how he's been programmed. And he's like, chill out. You know, like, hates chill. And she's like, well, have you seen this? You know, which must be so annoying for Paul. Like, anytime he's like, no, like, well, have you seen it? You know, like, Stilgar does it. Chani does it. And he's like, no. And then she's like, well, then why is he chill? You know, and he's like, because he's my homeboy Duncan. Like, I know, because I know. And he proceeds to bring out the Duncan in hate for her to see. And he does it by prodding him about his former self. They discuss how no Gola has ever recovered their memory before, but that hate would love to recover his memory. He would love to remember the life of his former self. And Paul states that he believes that there's a plastic something which remembers the shape of Duncan, Idaho in there. You know, like he knows it's in there. Like he doesn't know how to access it, but he realizes the plasticity of life, you know, and that things are not as black and white as they always appear. And he proceeds to bring out the Duncan, Idaho for her to see. And she totally sees for the first time the man in here, because she would just look as this guy's a threat. Cheney would just see this guy and be like, this guy's fucking bullshit. He's a gift. He's a gift from the guild. Beware of the guild bringing gifts. Like, this guy sucks, you know. I don't want him around my man. But when she sees the Duncan, Idaho in there, when she sees how much he cares for Paul and what an amazing good guy he is for just a moment, and that he's not just some weird thing, but someone she admires, you know, someone that she likes, and someone she wouldn't fear, because like Duncan, Idaho is like 100% Team Atreides. Like that guy is like 100% Team Atreides. So after Paul wins the Gola argument, and she's like, okay, fine, he's cool. You guys can train, whatever. She's like, she goes back to on the Irulan offensive, you know, it's like, goes back. Okay, now I'm going to go back to this. And he doesn't budge on his stance. He's like, you cannot kill Irulan. Just like, do not kill Irulan. And she's so confused, you know, she's just like, you should hate this bitch. Like, why, you know, like, ugh. And Paul just, he feels so distant, you know, he feels distant even with Cheney, you know, he's just like, he's kind of disengaging. And, but she's just happy that she's going to bear the heir. You know, she's happy, but she is frightened because it goes too fast. She's like, this thing is growing really fast. And Paul thinks the fetus knows the necessity for speed, you know? So again, it's like things are heating up. Even this baby knows that shit's crazy, you know? It's going to be a crazy baby. So on to our next chapter, we have Paul and Scytale. We finally see inside some of the Leilaxu plan. The face dancer has disguised himself as Lichna, the Fremen Samura addict, and she is the daughter of Otheim, who was a part of Siege Tabor, and he was a part of the Fedakeen, which is Paul's personal warrior bros. And she comes with a message for Paul's ears only, and she's let in because Cheney knows this girl, supposedly, and that, you know, in the Fremen way, if you're a part of a siege together, like, that's just like some real shit. And so it's like, okay, we'll let him through, or we'll let this girl through. And the moment, I like that this moment is highlighted. They take her to this room where there's an orrery. And an orrery is one of those things where you have like a planet and like the moons and other things, and like when you spin it, it'll show you like how the moons and the suns and everything in a particular system move. And I love that that you have it's just mentioned for just a second. It's mentioned for just a second, but both moons of Arrakis are in the classic worm trine, aligned with the sun. So we have a little bit of Dune astrology here. We got a little bit of the worm trine, which I was like, oh, tell me more. What does the worm trine mean? Please, you know, like, it's so interesting. A trine is like a triangle where you have different planets that line up in a triangle. And when these planets align in these different angles, there's also like a bunch of different other ones. But a triangle in particular is like a thing where these three energies are supporting one another. You know, they're supporting one another. A trine is like a power thing, and like the worm trine, I mean, that sounds like super powerful. And like Scytale is staring at it, you know, like, because he would know what a worm trine means. Like, he's had to take on the psyche of a Fremen. Like, I think that he might figure out what that means, and he's just like staring at it like, oh my God, like, this is where we're at right now. Like, astrologically, there's a worm trine. Like, how is that energy affecting everything? And Paul knows what's up for the jump. Like, he knows that this is a face dancer. He's like, okay, all right, I see right through this bitch. Like, okay. But he's going to go along with it. He's going along with it. It's giving Scytale confidence to carry out his mission. And finally, you know, we hear that the Leilaxu are trying to trick Paul into losing Cheney by his own failure, to realize that failure and to accept their alternative. And so she comes, Lichna's like, my father wishes you to come bringing Cheney because this is a water matter and she's a Cyadenia and there's a plot against you from the Fremen and we have the details and they're locked inside this human distrans carrier and it's at my dad's house. So like you need to bring her to my dad's house so we can tell you about this thing. And Paul's like, uh-huh. And he's like, okay, but Cheney isn't going. And Scytale gets frustrated, but he can't do shit. You know, again, it's like a power move where it's like Paul is playing along, but he's still guiding the entire situation. Because he's like, well, and I love how Paul like prods him. He's like, well, what about you? I mean, you could stand in for Cheney. You know, she's sick. She can't do it right now. So like you could stand in. She's like, oh no, my dad said that I can't come back and that you wouldn't risk me. So like I have to stay here. And then he's like, well, okay, well, what about my homegirl Hera? And she's like, well, I don't trust her. You can't use her. And he's like, well, then your stepmom. We'll use your stepmom. And then I'll go alone. And damn, like Scytale's like wins some and loses some. You know, it's like he gets part of what he wanted, but he doesn't get all that he wanted, you know, which is like really frustrating for him. And when Paul talks to his dude Banerjee, he's like, he uses the code word attendance, you know, to have Banerjee like know to put this face dancer under special guard. And so now Paul is again takes one more step onto his doomed path. And continues on. And our next chapter, we see him on the path now. You know, he's gotten the message. Now it's showtime. It's time to start going down this sad fucking path. And the header for this chapter, in particular, is really fantastic. I love this one. And in fact, I want to work with Akira to make Dune Wave 2. And I want to put this header totally in Dune Wave 2. No matter how exotic human civilization becomes, no matter the developments of life and society, nor the complexity of the human-machine interface, there are always comes interludes of lonely power when the course of humankind, the very future of humankind, depends upon the relatively simple actions of single individuals. And it's like, oh, yes, like, give me that knowledge. Like, that's so good. It's so true. And like we're in that time right now. It's like in this book, we're in that time where these interludes of lonely power, where relatively simple actions will change like everything. And Paul is out here on the streets like he used to be. He hasn't been going out on the streets. Like, remember when we first see him, he just gets back from his night walk. Well, since shit's heated up and since Edric's come to town and like all this like conspiracy business, he stopped doing that. He's like, okay, it's too dangerous to do that. But now he's doing it again for the first time in a long time. And he's caught by all the merchants' signs above doorways. And one in particular catches his eye, the propagation of the faith. And he thinks to himself like, pah, propagation of the bureaucracy. Like, I love that he just like hates his own shit. You know, he's just like, this sucks. And then there's this really great paragraph about a type of religious civil servant had sprung up all through his universe. This new man of the Kizeret was more often a convert. He seldom displaced a Fremen in key posts, but he was filling all the interstices. I'm having a hard time with that word. He used melange as much to show he could afford it as for the geriatric benefits. He stood apart from his rulers, emperor, guild, Bene Gesserit, Landsraad, family, or Kizeret. His gods were routine and records. He was served by mentats and prodigious filing systems. Expediency was the first word in his catechism, although he gave proper lip service to the precepts of the Butlerians. Machines could not be fashioned in the image of a man's mind, he said, but he betrayed by every action that he preferred machines to men, statistics to individuals, the faraway general view to the intimate personal touch requiring imagination and initiative. And I was just like, oh, like, I hate bureaucracy. I hate it. And I love this description. It's just like, yes, yes, like it's because that's what it is. Like bureaucracy just really like chaps my ass. Like I have a real problem with it. Because a lot of times we're like, oh, we'll make all these systems and then our systems are going to make everything easier. But when in fact these systems tend to make things harder and they become corrupt and then things get fucked up and like these systems are not making, like, have you been to the DMV? How, you know, like, fuck, like you just want to blow your brains out, you know, whenever I have to deal with bureaucracy, I'm just like, no, like I really have to like steel myself to like go deal with it because it's so difficult. And it's true, like bureaucracy is a thing where it's like preferring machines to men, preferring statistics to individuals, you know, the faraway general view to the intimate personal touch that requires imagination and initiative. And that's the one thing that like Frank Herbert hates it too, you know, he fucking hates it. You know, it's like there's a necessity for it, there's a need for it, but that it's also, it's not the deal either. It's like it takes away, it makes rules and laws so that people don't think, you know. It's like, I mean, have you ever, like when you do go to the DMV, you know, and it's like you give them a question that's like out of they're like, no, like these are the rules, this is it. And like you're like talk to them about something else and like, no, they can't even, it just has to be in this small window where they don't even understand what the fuck you're saying, you know. It's just like insane. And it's like, no, like I need people to use their brains, like use your brain, like stop thinking about like what you're supposed to say in what instance. Like, oh, okay, if this person has this problem, I'm supposed to say this. It's like, no, like, why don't you just be a human with me? Let's be a human for a minute. But like, they can't break out of it. It's all about like, people like having rules and regulations like that because then they don't have to think. Then they don't have to think at all. They're like, oh, well, when someone says A, I'm supposed to say B. You know, and it's just like so lame. So anyways, Paul hears the bells calling the evening rite at Alia's fane. And by the way, a fane is a temple or shrine. And this was a new place, obviously. I mean, they built this in the last, 12 years since they won the empire. And everything at her temple conspires to produce the impression or the illusion that this place is very old and full of tradition and mystery. But it's total bullshit. Like, he sees it's total bullshit. But even though he knows it's bullshit, it still begins to work on him. And like, even though like he, just like the Reverend Mother experienced the influence of his architectural designs when she was coming to the throne room, he's kind of experiencing those sorts of things on his own now, like kind of like she was. And, people are pressing in. He hasn't been jostled like this shoulder to shoulder with anybody for a long ass time. I'm sure it must have been very novel for him. And he thinks like, where had he put his foot on the path? He could not say he acted at any point in his life for one specific reason. The motives and impinging forces had been complex, more complex than any other set of goads in human history. He had the heady feeling here that he might still avoid the fate he could see so clearly along this path. But the crowd pushed him forward, and he experienced the dizzy sense that he had lost his way, lost personal direction over his life. And this particular thing is like, okay, so he's thinking that like, the crowd is pushing forward on him, and he's like experiencing this dizzy sense that he had lost his way. He doesn't know where he is. But not only is he thinking that, like, this is like as above, so below moment for him, where it's like, okay, on the small level right now in this instance, he's in a crowd of people, and this crowd of people is surging him forward. But like in the greater sense, humanity is pushing forward. Like he's like at the apex, like he's an apex human. Like top bred, number one apex human in the universe. And like, but even so, like the pyramid below him, like everyone is like pushing him, like humanity is pushing him, not just this crowd. And Paul experiences his own ritual, like Alia's ritual that they designed together. I'm sure that they all went over this. They all designed it. There are fake candles flickering. They have these electronic candles. They're fake. And he knows that they're fake, but yet they're still affecting him the way he's designed, a way that it's designed. And I like that he says that this setting was an avatism, subtly contrived, but effective. And he hated his own hand in it. And avodatism in biology is a modification of a biological structure whereby an ancestral trait reappears after being lost through evolutionary change in previous generations. So it's kind of like an evolutionary throwback. Like, say if a human being was like born with a tail, you know, where it's like, oh, maybe we used to have tails, but then we lost that, depending on what you believe. And that, like, oh, a human is born with a tail, and you're just like, oh, that's like an avatism. And this place, this setting was an avatism because, like, religion hasn't been at the forefront of the Imperium in so long. Like, it's been around, it's been a thing, it's there, but it hasn't been like a thing like it is now, you know? And like, this is something like religion on this scale is old. Like, it's like an evolutionary throwback, which I thought was a fantastic way to describe this. I was like, yes, like it really lets you know that like this is the rekindling of religious mystery is like real right now. But it's something that didn't used to be, like, even, you know, 12 years ago, it wasn't like this. And Paul studies the pilgrims around him, and he's suddenly envious of their intentness, the air of listening to truths he could not hear. It seemed to him that they gained something which was denied to him, something mysteriously healing, you know? So it's just like he's designed this ritual, he's here doing this, but he's like jealous of like how it's working on everyone else around him, even though it isn't working on him yet. Because he's like, man, these people are really getting something from this, and like, I don't fucking see it, I don't feel it, I don't know. And while he's thinking all this and he's looking around, his guide Razir comes up to him, and this is right before Alia takes the stage, right before the rite kicks into action. And he's with his guard, or his guide, and then and so because Alia is getting ready, it's because the evening rite's getting ready to go down, because the concert's getting ready to take place, the crowd surges forward, you know, just like at a concert. I mean, many of us have been to concerts, you know, it's like everyone's kind of milling around, but then when you know like shit's getting ready to start going down, like the lights start turning down or whatever, it's like everyone just like pushes forward, and like that's exactly what's going on here. And they packed into a tight mass of flesh now, the air heavy with their breathing, and the hype continues. You know, there's like all this Alia hype. You know, everyone's getting really hyped up for Alia to fucking come out. Like, yes, like let's see this demi-goddess. Like, this is like the hypest fucking concert in the Imperium right now. And also, again, it's like they packed into a tight mass of flesh. So it's like, it's that double thing where it's like, yeah, Paul is in like he's in like a small crowd, but really this is also a way to talk about him being a part of the human animal. You know, he's also a part of the human animal, the all of the universe that everyone in the Imperium symbolizes. And so he's sitting there and he feels sickened. He's like, what are we doing? Like, he sees how everyone is so hype on this shit, and he's like, my sister's like, she's growing older, and growing older is to grow more wicked, and like, we're setting her up as this fucking goddess, you know, and like, she's as corruptible as any human. Like, he really starts to sink in like the fucked up shit they're doing, and how this could like really like turn into not something that's awesome really quickly. And the mental atmosphere around him that they have created is like disturbing him. You know, he sees his errors, the personal sin in what he's created, how all this religious mystery that he's created controls the and he thinks about how all this religious mystery he has created, how he's trying to control the vastness of humankind with it, you know, the immensity of the universe. And he's like humbled, you know, he's like, yeah, I'm doing this, and yeah, it's like catching people, but how is this ever going to keep us all together, you know? Because he is using religion as a way to like bond humanity, to keep them together, and so that he can control them and direct them onto a path that is beneficial for all of humankind in the long run. And I love how he talks about the universe opposed him at every step. It eluded his grasp, conceived countless disguises to delude him. The universe would never agree with any shape that he gave it, you know? So even though, like, he's trying to do all this stuff, like, he knows that it's like there is no ultimate control. It's like herding cats, you know? That's what makes humanity so special. It's like we're such chaos, you know? You can never, again, herding cats, you can't get them all, you know? You might get a few of them, but some of them are still like going to be wild and crazy and do whatever they want. And so now Alia takes the stage. It's like, it's big time. She takes the stage. She's wearing yellow and green, and he's finally seeing her partake in the ritual from the eyes of the pilgrims. He's been backstage before. He's watched from backstage, but he's never watched from the crowd, and he's never been a part of the crowd. And the thing about being a part of a crowd is you do become a part of a mental atmosphere, and so now he really does get to experience it from the ground up here. And so I like that she's wearing yellow and green. Yellow and green. Yellow for sunlight and green for death. You know, she's so metal. And he's seeing that she partakes in the universe which opposes him. You know, he's just thinking about how the universe opposes him, and that's chaos. What he's speaking of, chaos. You know, there isn't really good or evil in our world. That's not really a thing. That's something that we like to say that there is. There's order and there's chaos. That's the real truth, you know, and we generally prescribe good things to orderly things and bad things to chaotic things. And so Alia, and it's interesting because you have Paul and Alia. Paul is the brother, Alia is the sister. He is the masculine, she is the feminine. He is the yang, she is the yin. He is the mentat, she is the reverend mother. You know, they're these opposed systems essentially. And being a woman, and being a part of chaos, she partakes in the chaos. And it reminded me of the mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. That's another one of my favorite Dune quotes of all time. And that's the thing is, like, Paul is trying to solve the mystery of life. How do I solve this? How do I get us on the right path? How do I control this chaos to where I can ensure that we're going to go on a path that's like going to ensure mankind going on for generations and generations and generations. But the thing about Alia is that she experiences this reality, you know, and he's trying to solve the problem. And that's what dudes like to do. They like to solve problems. It's very masculine. It's like, oh, I've got a problem. I got to solve it. You know, she's not trying to solve these fucking problems. She's out here fucking experiencing this fucking reality by doing this thing, like this, performing this ritual for all of these pilgrims, like every night. And she experiences reality. She experiences mystery every time she performs this ritual. And so the pilgrims, they give her this cup, this chalice with the unchanged spice essence, water of life in it. And she takes this sacrament. You know, this is kind of like a blood of Christ thing. If you've ever done communion, you know what I'm talking about. She takes this sacrament. She blesses it, much like the priests bless the wine. And she changes the poison into the awareness spectrum narcotic. Again, like water into wine. She takes something that is one thing and turns it into something that everyone can party on. And she performs a mystery for the people. Because this is something where she is in front of them performing a miracle. She's essentially performing a miracle. She's drinking poison and then she's converting it, which is like, they can't fucking do that. All the people in the crowd can't fucking do that. Only she can, and other reverend mothers, and I believe Paul could do it too. He did it once before. But she takes it, and I like that, like, Paul remembers the time that when he sees her taking it, he remembers the time that he took the water of life. And he looks at her and he's like, I know what she's going through. I've done this. I converted the poison, you know, like, I did it. But at the same time, he sees that even though he knows kind of what she's going through, he doesn't really know. Like, he doesn't really know what her experience is. And I think that's something that we all need to kind of take into effect, is like, we don't really know other people's experiences. Like, it could be very different, even though it's a very similar thing that you've done and this other person's done. Like, it's different. And now he's becoming taken in by this mystery, you know, like, all of the things around him are working on him. The ritual's finally, like, he's been in this mental atmosphere where everyone else is like super hyped and pumped, and it's starting to like infect him, this being pumped. And he's becoming enthralled. You know, he's becoming enthralled, just as enthralled with the crowd. Like, everyone is like, oh shit, like, she's taking the thing. And like, he's like, oh shit, like, he's like right there with them. Because it does infect you. Like, the mental environment you're in absolutely will infect you generally to some degree. You know, whether we like to act like stand apart and be whatever, it's like, no, it's going to affect you to some degree. That's just how we are. And And so so he starts becoming a part of the mystery with everyone around him. He's becoming enthralled with her, and he watches her fall to her knees with the rapture of the spice change. I mean, how fucking cool is that? She's like trembling and like falling to her knees. I mean, like to witness something like that would just be so cool. And Paul's transfixed by the power and the majesty of this moment. You know, he is, and for a moment, he's truly living in a now moment. Because he's always off in the future, you know, like most men, you know, they're always off building the future instead of living in the now moment. And it's not just most men, I shouldn't say that. It's also women too. But I think men in particular are like the builders of the future. And like that's where they generally prefer to live in their heads more so than the now moment. Whereas women, it's like, well, women are more in charge of like the home and things like that. And so you have to be in the now moment. Like, well, what do people want to, we got to eat. What are we going to do? Like, you know, it's like you have to be more grounded a little bit. But now he's in that now moment. And in this now moment, he's like really like he's in it with everyone else. He's like, whoa, this shit's working on me finally. Like, oh shit. And he starts thinking to himself like he's waiting for some private signal from her. Like he thinks to himself, she's here just for him, you know. But that's what everyone in the crowd is thinking. That's what everyone in the crowd is thinking. And he's like waiting for some private signal. But again, that's what everyone is waiting for, you know. Like that's what it's all. That's the whole deal. And it's like it could be an action or word, something of wizardry and mystical processes, an outward streaming that would fit him like an arrow into a cosmic bow. This instant lay like quivering mercury in his awareness, you know. And again, it's like that's how everybody feels in that crowd, you know. It's like, oh, how intense. And she says, there will be sadness. I remind you that all things are but a beginning. Forever beginning, worlds wait to be conquered. Some within the sound of my voice will attain exalted destinies. You will sneer at the past, forgetting what I tell you now. Within all differences, there is unity. And Paul suppresses a cry of disappointment. She didn't say the thing. She didn't get the signal he was waiting for. You know, he's like hoping. He's finally taken in by this mystery, and he's hoping like to have some sort of something, you know, something that's going to help him on his path of sorrow that he's on. And it's like for that instant, he was like a child again. I mean, he was like a child looking for a greater power than himself to guide him. But he was left wanting, you know, he was left wanting. The mystery was not there to comfort him. And I think that even though we all wanted Alia to say something to like empower him and like juice him the fuck up. But at the same time, I think that it's great that it didn't work on him. It's like this was working on him, but then the thing is like you can't look to something bigger than yourself. Like you can't look to be guided. Like you have to do it yourself. And the universe is essentially saying that to him, where it's like, it's just you, dude. And like, you got to do this. There is no greater force than you right now. Like you are it. And Paul's thinking to himself, well, I'm disappointed. If I'm disappointed, the rest of the crowd must be disappointed, you know, because they're all like, he's kind of plugged into this consciousness bubble that's going on. And Ollie starts taking questions. And a person in the back asks about a dead loved one, you know, and wanting, like, is he dead? Will I ever see my son again? And it's interesting because this is just like, this question triggers Alia. Because if you remember earlier, Alia tells Paul, like, don't cry for Cheney. She's not dead yet, you know, like, save your tears for later, you know. And now you have this other woman that's like kind of bringing all that up, where it's like, oh, you know, what about my dead loved one? Oh, you know, and it's like this woman's going around just like Paul's going around wanting to bring the living dead back to life. And she admonishes the supplicant, you know, and essentially she's saying to Paul, you know, and like it's like she's saying it to this woman, but really it's like what she really wants to say to Paul, which is just like, stop crying about it, you know, fuck off. She's pissed. And then she admonishes the supplicant. And then the next question is a business proposal. It's like, oh, I have a business proposal. Should I accept? And this brings up, in my mind, the business proposal in the chapter where the Bene Gesserit and Paul are, you know, bargaining for Cheney's life. And she says, you know, you look for a golden bowl, but will find only a dagger. You know, and I mean, that kind of goes to like how she feels about the business proposal that they were doing. It's like Paul wants to like find some way, but all he's going to find is death. You know, it's like all he's going to find is death. Again, like she's saying these things also for him. And then the last question that sets her off is, tell these businesses and faint hearts how long your brother will rule. And that is the last worst thing that you know, it's like that is not the question she wants to hear, because she knows that Paul has fixed himself upon some doomed fucking path. She doesn't really want to answer this question truthfully, you know, and she's like, see for yourself, assholes. You know, like she like kind of sidesteps it. It's just like, see for yourself, you know, like my brother is keeping this whole thing together. He rides the worm of chaos, you know, so that you can have a roof over your heads. And she mic drops and then leaves. You know, she just gets like really mad. Because I mean, it's just triggering her. Like all these questions are just like, oh wow, like this is like all these things that are actually going on in her life. You know, these are all questions that are bothering her and her brother. And she cuts the right off early. And it throws everybody off. You know, she's like mic drops and like, oh, the acolytes don't know what to do. Like nobody knows what to do. Leaves them restless and dissatisfied, because she herself is restless and dissatisfied. I mean, here's the thing about being a performer, because Ollie's being a performer right now. She's performing a concert, you know, a religious concert for everybody. And but the thing about like when you're a performer is like, okay, so she is in part influencing this mental atmosphere that's going on around her. And she is going to amplify, like whatever is infecting her and her consciousness is going to, it works both ways. You know, it's like it works both ways. Their thoughts on her are going to like work on her, and then her thoughts about them are going to work on them. And so because she herself is restless and dissatisfied, because she knows that her brother is out there, she knows that he is going to do some dumb shit, but she can't stop him, and she knows that there's nothing better to do, but she's pissed off about it. Like those feelings are going to like go into the crowd, and like that's exactly what happens. Like the whole crowd is like, like we're bummed out because she's bummed out. That's what's really crazy about like for me broadcasting is like, if I'm ever in a bad mood and I'm broadcasting, like you can't hide it. Like you can't hide it. It just shows, you know, like there's nothing you can do about it. And then I feel bad because I feel like it starts infecting other people, you know, it's like starts putting other people in bad moods, because like I'm like an amplifier, you know. Anyways. So now the crowd begins to leave. They're done. Everyone's like, all right, show's over. And Paul goes with his Razier, and he's following a track so familiar to his visions that it froze his heart with grief, you know. So he's like, God, this is so sad, but he's still going. He's got to put one foot in front of the other. And yeah, so that's it for Dune Club session 4 for today. Next, things really heat up next time. I'm really excited to talk to you about our next session. And for those of you who are not reading out of this book, let's look and see what the last line of the last chapter is. Let's see, page 276 here. 276. All right. A simple kindness. That is the last sentence of the last chapter that you need to read for session 5 next week. So yes, I know there's only 2 sessions left. Can you guys believe it? This thing is like, it's going so fast. just like Cheney's pregnancy, this is going so fast, you know. It's like so crazy. I've had so much fun with you guys. This has been really fantastic. Yeah, I know Dune Messiah is short, and that's kind of part of the reason why it is nice, though, to have a shorter book to go through, like, you know, because I feel like Dune was really fun, but holy shit, it was just, like, a lot to do that for, like, hold Dune in my brain for, like, that long, for, like, 12 weeks. Oof, that was a lot of stuff. Yeah, Dune Club felt the need for urgency. That's right, Mark Jake. It goes too fast. But let's take a 5-minute break. I'll be right back. We're going to answer some questions, and then we're going to have to cut it a little short today for the Q&A. I'm going to take questions from Patreon, and then we're going to run to the Huntington and then try to live stream this corpse flower. So, all right, guys, hold on just a second. We're going to be taking a 5-minute break.